at Snapdeal. He was a product manager at Walmart, and he was also the very first product manager at Flipkart. So I think his masterclass is going to have a lot of lessons. So over to you, Anuj.
Thank you so much. So thank you so much. Like Pan IIT always brings out like great memories, and today is no different. So the most important introduction got missed. I am from IIT Kanpur 2001 to 5. So glad to meet all of you guys here. Uh, so like we were talking about, I have been leading product and technology and marketing teams for a while now, largely from the lens of scale, and that's what the masterclass is going to be about. And while my lessons mostly come from B2C companies, consumer internet companies specifically, some of them are going to be universal. So any kind of companies that you're building, they may be helpful. Some of them may not be helpful, but so take them with a pinch of salt. This one. All right. So this is what I do right now. So I'm the CPMO at Jupiter Money. I've just joined 2 months back, so don't ask me too much about what does your company do. I'm still learning the ropes. I lead product management, marketing, design, growth, analytics, a bunch of functions which are truly non-fintech. So these are the ones that are required across all companies if you want to scale. Previously, I had led growth at Swiggy. I was there for 7 years. When I joined, it was just a 2-year-old company which was selling some food in a few cities. So we were not, or Swiggy was not really that big. So my role essentially, and the way I see it, is how do we grow this company to 100x? So I remember the day that I joined, we were doing like around 35,000 orders. And today, I think or Swiggy is currently at more than 2.5 million, something like that, in that range. Orders in India. Was a Snapdeal before that, leading their buyer experience. Buyer experience, this was a product and technology role. I was there at Walmart as well. So Walmart, I obviously could not grow 100x, but the lens always is how do I grow this business to many, many times. I was leading the store services, photos, pharmacy, anything basically that can be originated in the store and that you have to deliver online, or it is originated online and you have to go to the store to collect. So all those categories were under me. And then, yes, the most exciting experience was with Flipkart back in 2010. So I was the first product manager there, leading the buyer experience there again with a lens of growth. We were selling like around 800 books a day when I joined. We're a small, cutesy e-commerce, not really an e-commerce company either. Like we were just like a book selling website, and we were doing 100x by the time I had quit. So some idea around scale and growth. Well, I did not want to start the talk with calling it growth because growth is such an abused word. So we call it scale, but we really tricked you into that because we are going to talk about growth, and we are not going to talk about like beautiful ways in which you can scale your company in terms of technology. That's not what we're talking about. So masterclass is going to be applicable to most of us, either if they're building B2C companies, or they're thinking about growth, or they're thinking about product, or generally a good way to understand how does marketing, product, everything fits together, and what are some of the best practices, at least from my point of view, that I've found. All right. Okay, so this is going to actually take me through the links. Can somebody help me here? All right. So what are we not going to talk about today? We are not going to talk about PMF. Product market fit is a completely different ball game. Is a completely different way of thinking about products. You try, you fail, you iterate, you find some special market segment that you go after. The playbooks there are extremely different. So no gyan about that. While some principles may apply there, but do it at your own risk. So that's the first thing. Product market fit stage is different than the stage of growth, than the stage of scale, right? So how do I know that this is working? That's a product market fit stage. Most new product ideas will fail. It's impossible to predict which ones will work, which ones will not. There may be some probability that will be attached to them and so on, irrespective of how senior experienced you are, unless you have found some extremely clear insight that you're going to work on and build a product that really works. But at scale, a few things that I've seen, it's called the death cycle of products. What happens when different companies are already operating at a particular scale. And usually, and this is almost true for 90% of the companies that I've seen, observed, helped, like they look at their growth that it is flattening. It seems like, hey, what are we going to do about this? Let's try to do something. Let's build more features. So you start adding more features. You start thinking about maybe my consumers will start loving it, and so on and so forth. And then we just launch, and we think that after launching these features, our users are going to love it, but the launches keep getting smaller and smaller. You launch, and you think you need bigger launches, even bigger products, and so on. But what happens? Initial spike comes, and we think it's working. Okay, good. We do some A/B testing. We figure out that hey, this is working, and so on. And then again, we start seeing growth flattens. And you know what is happening in this time? The reason why I call it growth cycle, a lot of people think of this as a growth cycle. It's not a growth cycle. It is a death cycle. A/B testing your way towards growth or scale is essentially letting natural evolution take care of your product. So selection by natural evolution will lead you to some good answers by A/B testing, but it will take billions of years before your product becomes like very successful. It's not that easy. You have to think about it in different kind of frameworks. If you have to really think about a B2C company or even a B2B company in terms of how do we grow. How do we go? So where do we go from PMF? Is just a simple, fun slide that I put up around that. There are so many ideas that come to different people. Ki, hey, should I build this small feature? Should I build this large one? Should I build for a different segment and so on? But prioritization is hard. You need to absolutely focus on the prioritization. So here are a few ways in which I've realized how you can simplify some of these things. I'm not going to cover everything in detail, but a few tidbits if you want to take from today's talk. I think literally start from the user. So if you have built something, think about that user, understand that kind of user very, very deeply. A lot of people call them segments. A lot of us call them personas and so on. But really think about a person rather than a persona. And that is super important. It's a very, very interesting way and an important way in which some successful companies have really mastered this. I've used that at Swiggy, I've used that at Walmart and so on. In fact, I'm going to give you an example of Walmart. So before somebody says, you know what, if I just think about one person, I'm going to build like an entire product. Does it work? That's why I'm going to take an example of Walmart. Like there are like, Walmart has basically 1/3 of the US shops at a Walmart every week. So it's that big. But they think about their customer segments in like these 6 customers. If we are going to solve for these 6, remember these are not only personas, they are actual people. If you are going to be able to think about your users, distinct real humans with their needs and desires and aspirations and what is their family life, what is the journey, how do you think about that person in specific? And if you are building your store experience or if you are building your sales experience even for that kind of person, if you're building your app journeys for that person and so on, just imagine that person and not only a persona. Don't think about a segment. Get to a person and imagine it for them and build for that. The other way to use personas is that once you build for that, it's not going to look very different from some other apps and so on. There's a concept called blast radius. So if this kind of person is going to work for you, then a blast radius, which is like, hey, people who are 20% similar or 80% similar to that, your product may work for them also. Okay, so that's one quote that I really like of Ravi Mehta, who was the product head or CPO for Tinder. Like basically, when you build a product for millions, you build for none. But when you build a product for one, you build for millions. So this is probably one of the key insight that I want to take or want to talk about today. Any kind of company that you're building, think about one kind of one person, build for that. Now again, there needs to be some marketing, some intelligence that need to go on in your mind to imagine ki literally is that person and the blast radius so small that there literally exists only 3 people like that? No, don't be that stupid. Think about that person as a representation of a segment and build for that. So again, take it with a pinch of salt, but really do not go solving for 80% problems of this segment and 80% of that segment and so on. You really need to make choices. A good way in which Walmart did it, and I really recommend that, is that we in fact called these personas with adjective names. So we said the first 3 people that we are building for is modest Mata, and we actually wrote, money is tight. She earns only $40,000, probably divorced and has 2 kids and so on. Money is and a lot of that, right? And another person that wants to shop at a Walmart is a frugalista, and she's frugal. She's not really tight on money, but she wants to spend that way. And then one is Savvy Sasha. Remember, all the 3 are women. That's the primary personas of Walmart. And again, this is 2012. A lot of that has not changed. This is when I was there. At that time, we had built that. And these are secondary personas. So when we build a product or even a store was designed keeping those personas in mind. And we basically said, will it work for these three people also? Yes. And then we built 18 other personas and said, this is for a rich person, this is for a person who's a kid, this is for for a person who's a very elderly, and so on. Some of those things you can accommodate, but some of them you'll say, we are not building for them. And this is like really all of the years that we're talking about. You can still do that. So think about your business very sharply. You may be getting a lot of surprises once you evaluate your business. किसके लिए बनाया है? So, all right. Now, moving on to the second lesson of the masterclass. The way to think about all products building, in fact, all companies building, is that all the journeys are starting from an accepted customer belief to a desired customer belief. What is an accepted customer belief? An accepted customer belief can be about that category that your product operates. If you ask any customer about that category, what do you believe about this category? What is true? That's where the status quo is. Now you need to really crisply write down that persona that we talked about. What will they talk about after 3 years? What is their belief that they need to have about your category and your company and your product? And if that belief is changing, if you are able to actually move that belief to the desired customer belief, then your product and your company is extremely successful. So think about this very, very carefully. And there's working backwards from the desired customer belief. If beliefs are not changing, then those customers are anyway not buying your products from you, or they're not happy, or they're not clear, and so on. Articulate this very well. And I've seen, again, a lot of companies just fail at that. They don't even know what a persona in my category believes about my category, and believes about my company, and believes about my product. Even worse, they don't even know where they want to go. And where they want to go can be like a very large vision and so on and so forth. It can be that. But no, just write what is belief that you want to see. I've actually not captured a few things here. While you will write about beliefs, but beliefs are not something you can measure. What you measure is behaviors. So you need to also write down what is the typical behaviors that you want to see in your customers that will lead to this belief being true. All right. Cool. But I hope businesses were as simple. And if you can just like look at customers and personas and the belief systems, hack into that, and they will become extremely successful. But growth is and scale is way more complex than that. You need to think about your business holistically. You need to make sure that you understand what are the other nuances of the business, and those are called growth loops. And those loops essentially is like a working business model of your business. And remember, these are for Amazon and Uber, the largest two of the largest companies in the world, and they were both built on a paper prototype or paper napkin. Very simply, when Bezos was sitting in a coffee shop, like, hey, if I'm able to get, for example, if I get lower cost structure, it'll lead to low prices, that will deliver great customer experience, lead to traffic. More traffic will get me more sellers, and they will drive more selection. So it's a complex growth loop, but it's very simply put on a paper. Have you thought about your product like that? And this, again, B2C, B2B, it does not matter. Have like a clear understanding of how your entire product loop works, or the growth loop works. Well, I have had the chance to do it almost every year for the companies that I worked with. So it's not as if just a theoretical exercise. I'm going to show you something that I built for Swiggy. This is a little more complex than the one that we had there. But then that clarifies. In fact, if you go to the previous one, this growth loop diagram for Amazon does not apply, because now they've added another wheel or another angle of AWS, and also for Prime. So now that looks a little different. But the point is not that you have like great mathematical models describing your growth model, but the idea is you yourself mentally understand what is driving what, and then keep focusing on the right things and eliminating the areas that you don't want to work on. This also helps in scale, because look at, for example, Uber. And I'll give you an example of Uber like around 7 years back. And then, for example, when they realized, hey, I need to get a lot more customers on my platform, and they had all the incentive structures working on that. And Uber was a very, very customer-obsessed company in terms of number of rides, but extremely not driver-backward company at all, and so on. And they were not growing. And they figured out like, hey, what is really happening was that like while I'm getting more demand, and they were only concentrating on more demand, and more drivers were coming for some time. And then till the time those drivers were not coming, they were not actually getting faster pickups, and the growth loop was breaking. Uh, so then they actually said, you know what? Let me try experimenting on something else. So move all the incentives to drivers, like a lot of incentives to drivers, and it turned out that consumers did not need as much incentives. All they wanted was faster pickups and more geographical coverage, and that led to lower prices and all of that, right? So you need to be able to like put all of these things together and continue experimenting around your scale. So it's very easy to kind of lose control of which areas to scale. If you create the entire thing, you'll be able to scale in a very, very balanced way. So that's my approach. Well, this is for Swiggy, but like I said, like this is slightly more complex. The growth flywheel also kind of makes sure that we are putting Swiggy One program at the center of it. It starts with new users. How many of them will we acquire? How many of them will we retain? How many of them will keep on going dormant? Like we are not really a company which has like extremely high amount of stickiness, because people can really like turn over to Zomato and like or whatnot, and just get to another app. But if you are able to build this, then you will be able to understand your scale at different points, and all of these are points of massive failure. So you will be able to identify why is my scale not coming, which is the area that I'm not focusing on enough. I'm not going into like the growth means customer acquisition, marketing, PNs, and all of that. Of course, that is a part of that, but you have to like look at it more holistically. Cool. Now coming back to users. So now that we have understand accepted customer belief, moving to desired customer belief, we have understood. Think about personas. Think about the overall growth ecosystem. Another way to think, or another lesson in the masterclass, is that first we have to understand the hidden truth of modern internet users. And this is more of B2C, but it is again as true in B2B, probably more true in B2B. You need to understand that A, is your product truly, really compellingly differentiated and needed? If it is not there, then you may need to reconsider what you're building. Differentiated and needed, maybe for a very small customer base, it's okay, but you understand that need very well. If you're not, then you'll probably have to play the game of, hey, it's a product that everybody is also building. You'll need to play the game of like cheaper acquisitions and so on to make it build. That is also fine, but really a mental model that I'll coach around, which you can think, is that we do not. So we have to think about the customer who's extremely short on attention span. Imagine them to be lazy, selfish, and vain. So these are the operating keywords. So imagine that persona, and if you have to attract that persona, you have to put like these three adjectives on top of that. So which are these adjectives? And they're right. Lazy, selfish, and vain. Lazy. Modern internet consumers are very lazy. And again, maybe I'm not. All of us are modern internet consumers. When I'm saying lazy in terms of trying out a new product, they are lazy. It's like, I don't have time for that. You may write like elaborate copies and beautiful collaterals and like you want to attract them. They don't have time for that. The attention span is just gone. It's the TikTok, Instagram Reels generation, and it is worsening. So the attention span that you have for, especially in B2C, for getting a new user to try you, it's just not going to be there. So A, your product needs to be differentiated so that it even has a chance to stand out, and B, your marketing or your any way that you want to acquire the customer needs to be so sharp so that you can catch the attention of this extremely low attention span user who's anyway lazy. So don't do elaborate onboarding. Don't delay the experience, delay in experiencing the product. So you do a lot of storytelling. Hey, 5 steps before you show you the product. Don't do that. Build a self-explanatory product, explicit onboarding, simple, quick, succinct. Attract those customers. Your marketing has to be on point. So, okay, the other one, selfish. So modern internet consumers are also very selfish. What is in it for me? Can you show them instant gratification? Delayed gratification ke din chale gaye. A lot of people want instant dopamine hits. If I do this action, what are you going to give me? If I actually go and download your app, is this something at the end of this tunnel? And can you make me imagine that? If that is desirable, so think of it like that. If you haven't built your product like that, think about it. These are simple ways to think, but usually you'll miss many of them, because we think of our products mostly as metrics driven. Hey, which metrics are they going to move, and so on and so forth. So a lot of these things get deprioritized. But if you put on the selfish hat and think about, I have to create an aha moment for my users as soon as they onboard. The third one, vain, and this is probably the biggest one. Vain means, okay, the users have vanity. Vanity means they have a particular habit, and here you come with your $2 product and you're asking me to change my habit. Like, okay, how self-important of you. But you have to think about your users as whatever they are doing, they have been doing it for years or maybe months and so on and so forth. So a product that is sufficient, it's for you, may not be sufficient for a user to change their habit. So if you take these three lenses, and again, this talk is not to discourage any of you, but if you take these lenses, you will look at your product in a very, very different way. You will think about this for B2B companies. Now think about the persona that you're selling to. Most B2B companies are who? Selling to CHROs, CFOs, some VPs, and so on. Imagine a person, and imagine that person is lazy and vain and selfish. Selfish to bahut hai. He needs to show something not only for himself but for the company. And then you think, how am I going to even reach that person? And how am I going to change his belief? And then I'm going to make a sell that really works for them. So you need to think about it around that. Okay? Bowl them over quickly for vanity, and many times difference in your products on top of the funnel is greater than down the funnel. Let me explain what that means. Maybe you're running an e-commerce company. So top of the funnel meaning, if I can get you said, hey, beautiful coupon and you'll get X% off. Works on selfish, works on vain. Hey, of course there's something in me in this. So start using that action on or from the beginning, rather than that coupon will appear towards the end of the funnel when you're on the cart and checkout and so on. So don't do that. So remember, for a vain user, you want to start showing them value early and often and really hook them on that part. And again, these are some learnings that I have from my few companies that I've worked with and also like consulted. Usually seem to be in the right ballpark. All right. So a few things that that most companies kind of think of that as, and I'm going to reiterate this, think of that as afterthought. Afterthought, especially users onboarding. If you look at like the top 100 apps in Android store, and if you look at like actually historically, the biggest drop that you see in retentions is actually first time usage or first month. We may call it D30, we may call it M0, whatever that is. If you get 100 users to download your app, the average Play Store retention is less than 12%. People download and they just go away. Some people will retain, and you're like, yeah, sure, like a lot of people are doing that. That is the largest place for you to make an impact. Like you can, if you were to make that 2x, like imagine your curves or your smile curves going from there till the next 1 year. The biggest hack happens when you are onboarding the user. So there's a book that I recommend to everyone. It's called How Brands Grow. Again, not scale. How Brands Grow. It's by Byron Sharp. There's the two parts. If I ask this audience, if I have to look at two things, acquisition or retention, which one is more important? Let's start retention. Retention. All right. Acquisition. Very few. Okay. So that's a trick question. Both are important. It depends really on the context. But if you have to put your marketing dollars in acquisition versus your marketing dollars in retention, now that's a different question. Retention. Marketing dollars in retention. Okay. Marketing dollars in acquisition. Okay. Marketing dollars in activation. Okay. No, not many people understand what is that. But yeah, and this is not a global truth, but usually if you have to spend money, spending money in acquisition and activation is almost like the analysis has been done. Like you can actually read it in like a few of these books and papers. It's a way more effective way to actually get users and it's a much better spend than, for example, putting money in retention. And there are a bunch of theses that come here. One is like it's a tautology, which is brands which are big also have like a larger word of mouth, also get more people irrespective, and their loyalty will be high. It's a very counterintuitive way of looking at things. But again, going back to the topic that we were looking at, acquisition and the steps leading to onboarding and the steps leading to activation, which is like the first meaningful action that they have done on your app or product or whatever, is where the largest amount of drop-offs happen. And please focus on that. And your company or product will start doing extremely differently if you're just able to fix that. So your product's introduction, your first time usage, your overall design on how does it look like, excuse me, is all a part of that. All right. But we have to think about retention as well. Uh, and this is a very interesting or important one as well. High frequency products win. Like again, look at your product once again and think, how do I make this product high frequency? And of course, there are categories in which you cannot make your product go high frequency. Real estate purchase products are not going to be high frequency products, or you know, airlines products will not be high frequency products. But in whichever category you're playing, think about what is the highest category possible in this category, and then how do I get to that point, and what are the actions that are needed? What should be true in my product, and what should be true in my customers' behavior for it to become a habit? Well, again, real estate may not have that habit thing. But if you're running a Swiggy, yes, you will need to make it a habit so that the first time that a user thinks about which product to use, they come to yours and not like the competitors. And the same thing the other guy is also doing. Because nowadays, markets are very competitive. If you are not doing it, somebody else is doing it, they will create a habit, you'll lose out. So it's very, very important that you think about it from a habit point of view. Another, I think, like mostly everybody would know that. And we talked about two things, right? One is what are the events that should happen in your product. Facebook 2007 or 8, I think, and when Chamath was running their growth charter, one very interesting thesis or insight that they found through data was that if a user has made 10 friends in 15 days, then their retention and usage goes up. If they have not made 10 friends in the first 10 days, then it goes down and they will never come back. And they just acted on that insight, and that took them from 100 million users to a billion users. It was that powerful. So again, some of them may be counterintuitive. Look at your data very carefully. Look at those human insights very carefully. Try to marry them, conduct experiments, look at those behaviors that you can build so that your product becomes a habit. And when the habits get built, all your usage curves go up, your monetization is happy, your company grows 100x. Work backwards from a future. So this is probably my last slide because I know that there's a very interesting panel also coming up. There's also a book called Working Backwards. So I highly recommend. So these are the two book suggestions for today. One is How Brands Grow. Second is called Working Backwards. Working Backwards is an Amazon way of building products. So instead of thinking, hey, should I build this feature? Let's iterate, let's figure out and so on. And there are 10 people who are working on that. Or letting your startup be extremely hand wavy. Instead of that, imagine a date. Imagine what really needs to be true on that date in terms of what will you launch. Your vision has to be clear. And this is not the vision of like, hey, world peace vision. Vision means crisp vision of what a user will see. How the machinery which runs that product will work. What are the risks that you have handled. And 6 months out or a year out and so on. Write that down in a press release format. So that's something that Amazon does very, very well. So this is, for example, a PRFAQ template. I'm not going to go through like actually the template, but they actually write a press release. It's very, very important that you write that press release and then make all the trade-offs right there because it's a one-pager. And then you're saying, okay, Bangalore, 24th April 2024. And then after that, a bunch of things are written. Then you speak with your team. Can we make all this happen on 24th? No. All right, cool, change the date. And let's actually like work towards the wordings of my press release so that it reflects if this product was launched. One, what product will be launched? What is the scope? And what are the most important decisions that you're taking and trade-offs that you're working on? If this product was launched, what would a customer say? That is right there, the accepted customer belief. Because even if after reading that press release, you are saying, ye banane se aisa koi nahi bolne wala, then you should not work on that probably. If you're going to take a big bet, make that bet count and work towards making customers happy. And a lot of experiments should really just be thought experiments and should be junk. So that's another, masterclass that at least I have seen. Not all ideas are great ideas. Not all ideas need to be experimented. You play it out and you say, okay, by this date, all of these things need to be true. I want to experiment. And I say, will people respond positively? No, then don't do it. If you're reasonably sure. If you think that maybe there will be a segment of customers that can do it, and if your startup is dire straits, or if your startup has like a lot of free bandwidth and so on, then do it. But over a period of time, you'll realize the rhythm. Cool. So those were a few masterclass elements from me. Thank you very much. You've been an amazing audience, very attentive. And if there are any questions, one or two, I can take them. Yes. I can, but I don't think others can. So, yeah.
Hi. Hi. My name is Himanshu, and I work in a fairly small startup. It's like a 30 people company. So, going through your talk, I realized that you have been talking about mental models and frameworks that
Yes.
marketeers or product people should use. But my question is, how do you think about these frameworks when you are firefighting? Firefighting is like for survival. It is everything. So how do you take out time to think about, okay, no, this is the model versus, okay, no, I have to make the revenue today.
Yeah, I think that's a very common question, and mostly all startups will face that point. And um, I think of that as like two different aspects, and that duality must be true in all founders and product managers alike. If you're only thinking short term and for survival, by the way, only think survival if literally those fires are going to come and so on, that's fine. But even think of them as fire prevention and firefighting, and you need to go from firefighting to fire prevention. So first step is fire prevention. Do not think of growth first, because you need to have less fires, because if you're going to build a very unstable product, on top of that, growth cannot happen. Even if it happens, it is like bad growth, it will go away, because you will disappoint your customers a lot and they will go away. So definitely you need to think about firefighting, but very quickly start moving to fire prevention, and at the stage start thinking about growth and scale. So that's my suggestion. Again, it depends on each company and each company's profile and trajectory, but you have to start thinking about scale. And unless somebody in your team, either it's a co-founder or somebody senior or even somebody junior, exclusively thinking about this without constraints of what is happening today, just imagining a brighter future and then keeping those ideas in, I think you will not be up for like a mega success. Cool. Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Sumit. One question that one thing that you mentioned is it's better to focus on acquisition for growth ROI as compared to retention. But isn't that
I didn't say that. I'm saying marketing dollars.
yeah, marketing dollars? Maybe,
Yeah.
yes, to be precise. But focusing on retention will not. Will definitely reduce the acquisition cost, because the retention is increasing and the overall growth of the company will be significant. So why do you say that? And why not focusing on both in balance will be a better option?
Yes. So two reasons, right? One, like I mentioned, the biggest drop off that happens if 100 people come, most people drop off in your first usage, first month, first X months, whatever you say. So even, and again, that's not a universal answer. You can look at your company's data and see what's your onboarding journey to actual 3-month usage and so on. And most of that is fixable, by the way. That's one. But increasing frequency is a way harder problem. So if you're people who are already retained, they already love you, getting them to love you more through marketing dollars is difficult. Second. Third, there is also going to be a lot of incidental burn. So for 10 people, so for example, you have like this curve, and amongst those, only 10% people are not behaving the way you want them to. But you will choose that segment, and 90% people who are perfectly happy with your product will start eating into that marketing dollars also, just to impact that 10. So again, simple models, but you need to do the math. But that's why it's a contrarian opinion. Acquisition, and most startup founders hate that word. We will get to a user and we'll keep them for life. You can, yes, and great, go for that also. But do not forget acquisition. That's why that contrarian point was made. All right, cool. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Yes, give a big round of applause. Big round of applause for Anuj Rathi, the man himself. Thank you so much, Anuj.